Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and we are entering a quiet period for a few days, which is good after all the volatility that we've had over the last 10 days, going from 60 to 0 to 5 below, in some cases even lower, back up to the 50s to around 60, and now we're just going to calm down for a little while. And I'm going to go back to the European from the day run so we can look for some comparisons here. And what happens is, this is the upper airflow on the European, and by the end of the week, you can see that the flow pretty much comes west to east. We have some troughing here in the east, which is a chillier air mass that's moving out, and then as we go into the weekend, it's pretty much a straight westerly flow. Canada's somewhat cut off, so we don't have any real cold air, so it's going to warm up to some degree, not overly so, but enough. And then as we head into early next week, we have a cold front that comes on through, high builds in. Now, this is what it does with this potential for the middle of next week. And you can see there's energy here in the northern stream, there's energy here in the southern stream, and the entire northern stream just kind of wraps up the south, cuts it off in Ohio, and you wind up with a fairly strong low somewhere just offshore, and then it moves it right overhead, and then of course it's gone. Now let's look at the new GFS run, because this has been an issue the last several events when we've had these systems in the southern stream, whether they phase or don't phase, or how they react to what's going on in the north. And you can see on this run, it's pretty much the same idea. You just kind of get into this zonal flow here, and not too warm, but milder certainly, and not too cool, because all the cold air is up in Canada. And then we get a gradual cool down early next week as high pressure builds in. You start to see energy in the south, energy in the north, but it's not really all that well defined. And the model just kind of doesn't do what the European does. It keeps the stream somewhat separate, and then just sort of brings it along to the coast and out. And you know, the issue again is whether we phase or don't phase, or how strong is everything, or how weak is everything. So we'll switch over to the surface map so you can get an idea. I'll go a little closer so we can take a look here, and we'll just back it up. Now remember, we're still a week plus away, so we're going to see some changes here. Here's the weather front that goes through on Monday and brings a high over into eastern Canada. Now there's no blocking, so that high is going to go out, although it's going to go out not like the last one did. It's going to go out a little further north over Nova Scotia, so that'll probably trap some cold air to some degree. But you can see how it tracks the surface low, pretty much coast hugs it right on up, which would be some good snows inland and mostly rain at the coast, if this is right. And we don't know that it is. So this is one possible solution among many possible solutions that we're going to see over the coming days, and we just don't know what the European is going to do with this when it gets a low when it comes out in just a little bit. And let's see if we can see that the Canadian does. I haven't even looked at the Canadian. I'm taking a look at it for the first time, so we're going to look at it together. And you can see that front goes by, but it has a much weaker southern feature that goes out on Wednesday, and then something else that comes in toward the end of the week and really doesn't do very much other than to turn it colder. So let's see what we can figure out. If we go to the upper air and see what the differences are on this model, and you can probably pick it out already as we go forward here. I'll start with Monday. Weather front comes through. There's the northern stream, much more progressive. There's the northern energy. There's some southern energy here, much more progressive. Never really gets wrapped up the way the European does, because it has this second piece of energy that comes down and tries to do something toward the end of the week. But you saw on its surface, it was a low that went up into the Gulf of Maine. So, you know, you have this problem where you have all this energy going to be running around again, and how it plays out, it remains to be seen. Now, let's take a look at the wider view of the GFS, because that at least will give you a clue of what's going on elsewhere and how this all impacts. And you can see from the zonal flow, Another vortex forms up in Hudson's Bay. The ridge in the west begins to fly up again, and it builds pretty sharply. There you see it right here, all up the west coast, which is one of the ingredients you need, but it never really quite does it the way the European does, and then just lifts on out. But the ridge is still intact when you look at it in the longer term. That ridge in the west is still there, so something is possible to come down in all of this. It's just another one of these long, endless puzzles that we're going to have to try to put together. So in the meantime, I would just suggest that you relax and enjoy the next several days through the weekend and this break from all the volatility, and then we'll start to focus our attention on this as we move through the coming days. Nothing is imminent. If you read about an impending, doom snowstorm, I would ignore it. If are there possibilities? Sure, there are always possibilities. So let's see how it plays out over the next several days.